Given this consistent and corporate Christian heritage in law and liberty, Brewer asked the following question, quote, "Shall it be believed that a Congress of the United States intended to make it a misdemeanor for a church to contract for the services of a Christian minister residing in another country?" He answers his own question, saying that Congress never intended such a law to limit the rights of a church or synagogue to contract with a spiritual leader of its choice. Such a matter is solely outside the civil realm. Thus, Brewer concludes that the court could not construe this statute to intrude upon the work of the church, thereby hindering the furtherance of the gospel and interfering with the free exercise of religion. Had he not adhered to America's Christian heritage in law and liberty, he could not have justified his conclusion. Today, the Holy Trinity case is all but dropped out of history through the black hole of historical memory. Strict separationists and others who deny America's Christian history call this case a legal anomaly. As evidence of revisionism, in 1969, the book entitled The Justices of the Supreme Court, a biographical history of the many Supreme Court justices, gave David Brewer 34 pages discussing his many opinions and cases, but never even listed the Holy Trinity case. The Holy Trinity case was his most important case and the one for which he was most proud. Yet when Brewer died in 1910, the U.S. Attorney General of the United States, at his funeral, devoted most of his remarks to the Holy Trinity case. Brewer had also written a small book in 1905 entitled The United States, a Christian Nation. In his book, he states, quote, "I have presented no doubtful facts. Nothing has been presented that is debatable. The quotations from the charters are in the archives of the several states. The laws are on the statute books. Judicial opinions are taken from official reports. In short, no evidence has been presented which is open to question," end of quote. We are in a long era of historical revisionism. We are in a time of the deconstruction of our Christian past. We must diligently search out these stories and accurately defend our heritage, because this and other significant precedents are not taught in our major universities or law schools, and they are also largely ignored by the popular media. A Russian proverb says, quote, "The future is certain, but it is the past that always changes," end of quote. A humorous incident from the old Soviet Union illustrates what we now face in the United States, which was once a good and noble Christian nation. In 1924, after Lenin died, Stalin took power in Russia and forced Leon Trotsky into exile. Trotsky, along with Lenin, had been the founder of the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917 and the architect of the communist takeover in Russia. Stalin removed Trotsky from Russian history, even from the photos. And there is one photo of these major Bolshevik leaders standing together, but Trotsky is missing. Stalin had airbrushed Trotsky from the photo, but he missed Trotsky's shoes. There they are, Stalin and all the old Bolsheviks standing together with Trotsky's shoes. The term Trotsky's shoes has become a humorous proverb in old Russia, according to Dennis Prager of Jewish World Report. In history today, we have the Holy Trinity case, an American example of Trotsky's shoes. Although it has been ignored in recent years, it was rendered in 1892, 300 years after the first settlements, and right on the threshold of the 20th century. Tonight, I hope to be able to see America's Christian heritage in the picture of American history for a few brief moments. Thank you.
America is a Christian nation in the same way that America is a white nation. The majority of Americans are both white and Christian. However, we are not now, nor have we ever officially been, a white nation or a Christian nation. Those who believe America was once a Christian nation may be hearkening back to the first Europeans who settled here, including Christopher Columbus, as Chaplain Moore mentioned. But these Pilgrims and Puritans were not the people we call our founders, like Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Franklin, and so forth. I'll talk about our founders in a minute. The Pilgrims and Puritans were religious dissenters from Europe who sought freedom of worship here for their own religion, but most definitely not for other religions. They had no use for religious liberty. The early colonies were mostly theocracies, where those of the wrong religion were excluded from government participation and were also persecuted. For example, the Puritans who established Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1630 required all Massachusetts citizens to pay a tax to the Puritan church. Those who didn't pay went directly to jail without passing go. This church-state union led to the Salem witch trials of 1692, which were based on the biblical mandate, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." Most of our early colonies also made blasphemy a crime, an offense that could be punishable by death. In the American Revolution that started in 1776, political leaders began to construct a new federal government. The soon-to-be United States of America not only declared independence from England, but also declared something even more radical, that governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Americans rejected kings crowned by bishops who had been vested with a God-given authority to rule through divine right. The framers of our U.S. Constitution wanted no part of the religious intolerance and bloodshed they saw in Europe and also in our own early theocratic colonies, when we may have been Christian in the various colonies. They wisely established the first government in history to separate church and state. James Madison, affectionately known as the father of our Constitution, said, "The purpose of separation of church and state is to keep forever from these shores the endless strife that has soaked the soil of Europe in blood for centuries." Our founders understood the devastating nature of holy wars. They wisely established a secular nation whose authority rests with "we the people," the first three words of the U.S. Constitution, and not with "thou the deity." In the process of coming up with this new federal government, a minority faction in the Constitutional Convention of 1787 sought some recognition of Christianity. But more enlightened founders, like our own Charles Pinckney, a South Carolina delegate to the Constitutional Convention, disagreed, and he even recommended language prohibiting religious tests for public office. This became Article 6 of the United States Constitution, a constitution adopted in 1789 as a purely secular document. Unambiguous language from our founders really should settle this debate over whether America is a Christian nation. In 1797, the Treaty of Tripoli was negotiated by George Washington, signed by John Adams, and ratified unanimously by the United States Senate. This trade treaty stated in part, "The government of the United States is not, in any sense, founded on the Christian religion." I wonder what part of "not" Chaplain Moore doesn't understand.